In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my teaching samples out of my portfolio bags. So I've got hundreds of them from my 30 years of teaching, so I thought I would share these. These are not full-blown lessons. These are just ideas that you may want to take an idea from, kind of like Pinterest, but hopefully better. If there is something you find that you think, oh, I'd love to have a full lesson on this so that I can present it to my students, then go ahead and comment below which particular project or exploration you feel you'd like to see more information about. But these are just some very quick snippets out of my portfolio. So this one is going to focus on illustration, and in general I'm going to say that this is about projects that can be done without reference material, though references can be used, but it's not like from direct observation. So we're not talking about portraits, landscapes, those kinds of things. So some of these, a lot of these can be done out of your head or from basic sort of references. So obviously tessellations, very popular to explore. The difference that I do is I don't have my students create a grid and then put their tessellation into the grid. I have my students do an image in the middle and then repeat the image going around, and then they're supposed to stop if it's going to hit an edge. Sometimes I also have them pull out one of the tessellation pieces, a module, and then it's kind of nice to see it separate and then in the collection. I think Escher did a lot of work like this, and I like the way it works out, and then we can get away from forcing the work into a grid. I have some videos on tessellations. I have a whole tessellation playlist, so you're welcome to look at that with some simple and advanced versions of tessellations. Another illustration project I like to do is the Jabberwocky. So we look at the poem, we kind of break it down, we make interpretations of what do we think that Lewis Carroll was trying to say. Sometimes we do it where the kids just do the drawing of their particular stanza. Each one gets a stanza. Sometimes I've done things where they just blob paint onto watercolor paper and then sort of tease out a creature using pens to kind of make certain parts of it come out. So I want it to be more abstract, and this is kind of a fun way to do it through painting with blobs and then later on kind of pulling out the lines and shapes that go along with the stanza. And when you break up the whole poem into its components with your students, you can put it on display and then have the whole poem showing. So I have children pull the stanza out of a hat. And I've done this as low as first grade all the way through 12th grade high school. Another fun one to do is where you take the straw and blow watercolors or inks. They make for really good underwater scenes, and then I can make some resources available, some posters of fish and things like that, so my students can draw real fish in there, maybe have the fish doing something they would enjoy doing. It'd be fun to have a little playground under the water and then fish kind of streaming around. This is just an example to show a technique, but when my students do it, I have them have the fish doing something that they think would be kind of fun. And also to consider themselves as one of the fish. Are they a party person and they got a lot of fish around them, or are they kind of off to the side? So that it can be a little bit more expressive and personal. For my older students, when they see the little kids doing it, they're like, oh, how come we can't do that? And so I did do this with the older ones, and they did the jellyfish in their scene, and then they had to create a whole underwater landscape. So we did print out references. They had to look up their own references. They picked an underwater creature that represented them. So we got a shark here for somebody who's a little bit more aggressive, and then we included some jellyfish in the background. And you could see, very simple, add a little highlight and stuff, and they came out really kind of fun. Another one I like to do, which ties into geography and history, is I get a whole bunch of these old maps from National Geographic, and then I have my students do treasure map projects. So we make sure that we include a key. They have to have 5 land features. They need to incorporate the compass. They're using their ruler skills. We're doing pattern. This is a very involved project, and then we don't actually soak it in coffee or something. I use just kind of leftover paint, pour it all into a big bin, and then they dunk their paper into that water for just a few seconds and pull it out crumple it into a ball, and then very carefully open it up. And then we actually use a printing brayer to flatten them out again. So it has this nice sort of look. If they want to have a burnt edge look, I just give them brown and black pastels, and they can kind of rub them on the edges. If you actually burn the paper, it doesn't look all that good. The burned parts sort of fall off, and it's dangerous. Another one I've done is, we've all done name illustrations where, you know, the students do each letter of their name to kind of represent a part of their personality. I have the students look up what does their name look like in Chinese and then do the same idea with that. So this is my name, and then you could see I've got, you know, I like nature, technical drawing, I got an easel for me as an artist, the computer, because I've got this YouTube channel now. So it's my name in Chinese, and then each of the Chinese characters is in elements that kind of are personal to who I am. Another one my students like to do, I do this every year, is an alphabet illustration. So each letter has to be a different thing in the alphabet. So they use their rulers, and we actually just lay a ruler on the edge of the paper, draw a line, and then move the ruler to that line and go up. They can also do a measured one. So they take something that represents something they enjoy. Here is, you know, kind of graffiti. And the simplest version is this, where you have one element sort of repeated to make the entire alphabet. But they can step it up a bit, and like here's one that is, I think this is winter holiday, or winter. So some of them are repeated, like the mountain and M and N. The E, F, J is kind of combined. The U, V is sort of combined. So there are some things that are unique, certainly, and then there are some things that are separate. So this is kind of a higher level skill. So I tell my students they can make everything the same, or they can make different things, and the highest level, of course, is going to be where every letter is something different. You'll notice that the ink bottle for A doesn't start A, ink. I have them look at the shapes. I don't have them think about what is the letter meaning. So I don't have to use P for paint. I'm using the paint drips to show an M. So if they can get away from the idea that the letter has to be the same thing, then it's easier to do this project. If they get stuck very fast if the letter has to be the same thing, so that don't do that. I do give extra credit for students who want to do that and are capable of it. So like if they're doing an alphabet for their kindergarten brother or sister as a high school student, they can do a learning alphabet, that's what I call it. So A for alligator, and they make a little alligator into an A, and that's fine. Another fun illustration project is find a recipe and then illustrate it. So I did this one for my candied bacon, which is one of my favorite things to do on a Sunday once in a while. So take a recipe, fairly simple one is probably a good way to go, and then they can illustrate the steps, and the maple syrup kind of leads you through, so that can be a kind of fun project. Here's another one where we did a sunset, and then they had to pick an animal to kind of represent them. So this is a rhino hiding in there, so the tips of the tree end at the edge of the animal, and then we even have some shading and texture stuff going on in there. Another fun one is if you take a drawing and you layer lots of papers underneath it, like newspaper, wrapping paper, color paper and stuff, grid paper. Just make you need 4 or more layers underneath a simple black and white drawing. And then what they do is they cut out the drawing and they're cutting the layers. You need to staple all the way around like a frame. And then they pull it apart and like a puzzle, put their drawing back together. And then I have them use a little bit of cross-hatching to show shadows. So it makes it look a little bit more 3D. Here's another version, a little larger. So again, you do a drawing on white paper, then you layer all sorts of papers behind it, even foil, different kinds of things, staple the edges, and then you cut out the elements, and then they become puzzle pieces that can be reassembled. That's an awful lot of fun. Comic book cover illustrations. I don't know why the boys particularly like this. I put up this poster so that they understand that it has to have the 4 elements. We got title, subtitle, action, logo. And then they get to kind of do what they like inside of that parameter. So they can do a parody, like Killer Turkeys from Outer Space. We've got foreground, middle ground, background, overlap, title, subtitle is up in there, and then there's the subtitle, logo, and we've got an action. The logo is HT, Hand Turkey Comics. So they have an awful lot of fun with this. Here's a student example. Okay, so we could put a mashup, so we have a verses, and we can enjoy that. Let's see. Another one that I do, especially with my little kids, is compound word illustrations. So here we've got toadstool. So they have to put two words together to create an illustration. We've got carpool, done with markers. And jailbird. Now, sometimes we like to explore Cubism, and it can be a little tough for people to kind of understand that. So what I do is I have the students get a large piece of paper, and I tell them to crisscross it 50 times with a ruler. And then that gives you this kind of web. You can see closely the crisscross. And then I give them a picture, or they pick a picture that they think, again, speaks to them, or you could tie it to history. This is, Nina Pinta Santa Maria kind of thing. And then they have to try and fit the illustration into the lines that are already there. So you could tie this into history, pick an image from history, you could do this with portraits. It could be an awful lot of fun, and it gives them the start of an idea of what Cubism might be like. Illustrating your name with cultural patterns. So you can look up your name and then look up your culture. So if you happen to be of Asian descent, you can look up symbols from Asia. If you are German, look up symbols from Germany or symbols from England or whatever it is, and then use those as your patterns inside of there. I'm not going to use the copyrighted name for that technique. Another fun one is two objects together and swap their textures. So if you need to play with the art element of texture, that can be a fun way to do it. So we've got a wooden bear and a fuzzy guitar. Another one, take an object that represents something I like tea, and then turn it into a house. And then you can go into, create your bedroom, inside the object of what it is you like. This is kind of a common one where you morph things, you kind of show their progress. So we give the kids lollipops. They do this in middle school, elementary, and they have to draw the lollipop, and then they get to have it a little bit, and then draw it again, draw it again, draw it again until it's gone. So this can be kind of fun. If you're not allowed to give out food, then you can ask them to bring something they're allowed to have, and then draw it in the beginning, and drawing the steps, and we even added shadows. So this would be a high school group, an elementary group. I don't know that I'd have them do shadows, but depends on the ability of your students. Another one, doing silhouettes of animals, so again, picking an animal that represents, your personality, and then put a hole inside of it, and then drawing something inside. So something kind of unexpected. So what could be inside the bird? So obviously it could be maybe what they eat, if you want to research that, and have a biological connection to your lesson. But you could also go surreal with it and put maybe a living room and people eating dinner. So you can kind of have some fun with this idea and then connect it to your sciences. For cultures, again, I have students research their culture. So we've got Irish and African. So they looked up an animal that represented their culture. So she picked the giraffe because she was very tall, but then her father was Irish, so she picked that as her background. And then we've got the pattern in the background and the animal in the foreground. I've also done this as a printing lesson, and I have that at artedguru.com, and many of these are loaded in there that you can see a little bit more in lesson plans you can download. Another fun one is give them an outline for a few different cars. They pick a car that they like. I go for something boring, something fun, something unusual. And then you just give them the basic outlines, and then they have to design it as though they're a designer for a car company, but they have to do something unusual, like turn the car, do a mashup with a car and a cow. So we've got the udders up top and the spots and the antlers up front. Or a car and I believe this one's a jet plane. Okay, a fighter jet from the World War II. And then here's one, a car and a shark. So putting the two together as a design project can kind of be fun. So these were obviously my samples for the kids, and they came up with some really wonderful stuff. So wonderful, in fact, that I didn't get any of them for samples. Another one to kind of play around with is doing shadow by thin and thick lines. And then you could color it in if you want, but this could be a really quick example for showing line variety. I do another project which they create a pattern, and you'll see the base of the pattern is just one square, and they have to be able to connect either to the four corners or to the four centers, so that there's a little cardboard cutout. We use X-Acto blades to cut out the shapes, and that it has to be able to repeat every time you turn it. And if you have an odd number of rows on a grid, you can come up with some interesting designs. So I show them they have to do it in pencil, they outline it in pen, and then I give them India ink and a brush, and they create these kinds of patterns. So it's kind of fun to see what your little module creates as a larger pattern. And then here's one that a student left for me. They ended up moving without their artwork. So you could see it came out really kind of cool and fun. Another one, we're almost done here, fashion design. So they have to pick out a swatch of culture paper. I have these papers that I got from NASCO. So I just cut them up into little bits, and then they pick them out of a hat, or they can look up a pattern from their own culture. Like they can look it up, print out a pattern, and then they use that for the basis of 3 outfits. So one is daily wear, one is a costume, and one is formal wear. And they have to learn about, you know, the proportions of the human body. I actually have some proportion printouts in my art students workbook that's available at firehousepublications.com and other resources there. So this could be fun. So they're all tying back into the swatch. So using that to create their looks. I'm going to end with this one. Is a lot of fun and unexpected. So we have seen these ideas where you draw, you know, a paper bag and have the students use warm and cool colors, and that's fine. We've done that before. But what I do is I have them hold it up to the light, trace the bag, and then draw something else inside the bag. And then when you take this and you display it on a window, you can see the thing in the bag through. So it's kind of this funny little trick. Now, if your paper is too thick, you can actually spray your paper with acrylic, clear acrylic, and that will help the translucency of the paper. So that's one with a shark inside. So again, you have to, once your picture's done, you hold it up against a window and you trace the shape of the bag on the back, and that way the image fits inside the bag. And then another bag, and this one is a student one, again, somebody who moved. So they used their warm and cool colors to paint the bag from observation, and then inside the bag was a seahorse. So we kind of had some fun with that. So if you have found this helpful with lots of interesting ideas, go ahead and subscribe and like this particular video. And if there was a project that I had here that you'd like some more information on, or perhaps maybe you want me to do a whole video that you can present to your students, go ahead and comment below, and I will take a look at that, you know, from time to time. And I can't upload everything at once, but I am certainly working on it. Thank you so much.